Geneva, as well as with the Security Council and the Congress and the State Department yesterday and the day before. However, I'm focusing more on localization. So my work experience is mostly around national governments. I worked with the US government, I've worked with the Canadian government, I've also worked with the Saudi government and the Egyptian government, more so than other governments, let's say. And I decided that it was time now to help and focus on local NGOs. And hence, that's what I'm doing at the moment now. I am with a Syrian national NGO, but part of the MENA region, or shall I say now WANA, the new abbreviation, according to the UN. And I am part of their strategic advisory group, and I engage in negotiations and advocacy. I am a localization champion because I believe that only the locals know their country better, only the locals know what they want, only the locals know their communities. So having outsiders, or let's say the global north, or other governments imposing their will on the locals just doesn't make sense to me. So with that being said, I will just have a very on the surface talk about going beyond localization and not just, you know, working with governments or working with INGOs, international NGOs, or working with the UN, but more so that we are now to stand up and do the work ourselves and impose what we want on the governments, on INGOs, and on UN agencies. I'll just quickly brief you, as you all may know, that localization came around, especially with the Grand Bargain, over in 2015, many years ago, and it's had over 50 signatories, 50 of the strongest humanitarian financial aid actors in the world. They've all made the 6 commitments and agreed to the 6 commitments of the Grand Bargain, which is focusing very much so on localization. The work streams are many, and we have had 3 versions of the Grand Bargain. So if you are in Geneva, you can pass by and discuss the Grand Bargain. There's some more. However, when the Grand Bargain was put into place in 2016, there was another affirmation and confirmation through the World Humanitarian Summit that was held in Turkey that governments and humanitarian organizations have acknowledged the fact that we must localize humanitarian assistance and humanitarian responses. Further on to that, a year later, in 2017, UN OCHA also promoted this and endorsed the same thing, saying that this will be the new way of work moving forward. Are we ready for the surprise? The reality, unfortunately, although a promise was made that by 2020, 25% of all humanitarian aid and assistance worldwide would go towards local organizations, did not reach it. And as of 3 months ago, when President Trump announced that he would donate 1.7 million up until 2 billion in aid to various OCHAs around the world, and other funding that came through. So nearly $2 billion was sent out to various countries around the world, and guess how much went to local actors? Just 4%. Again, not reaching localization standards or what the promises were made by governments worldwide and by INGOs worldwide and by the UN. So now, what is localization? There's several meanings of localization. However, most people look at localization as sending money to the locals, starting projects with locals, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. We're missing the point. We need to understand that localization is about the people, the locals, those that own their land are the ones that need to be making those decisions, need to own up and have the leadership and ownership of their own communities. And again, when we speak about this, the question comes into play, who really makes the decisions that affect people's lives? Your conference focused very much on, this conference focused very much on newcomers, focused on refugees, focused on the people who are being displaced. So who makes their decisions? Who makes their livelihood go the way it goes? Unfortunately, the reality is that it's not them. Some external force has imposed themselves on these people. All right? In Syria, I can give you an example about Syria, and as we know, many crises around the world, communities are the ones that generally are the first responders. Okay? Because you will not have the UN agency coming, you will not have a foreign government coming, you won't even have the local government involved if there's an earthquake, if there is a catastrophe, if there is a flood, if there is an attack. Who are the first people to respond? It's the local people. Yeah? And only sometimes, okay, are they actually consulted when the actual response happens. Now, we need, oops, sorry, it's not for some reason moving. There it is. So, what is it? What is localization? If I'm not happy with the definition of let's partner with them, let's send locals money, well then what is it? We need to strengthen local leadership. Locals need to take control of themselves. They need to be enabled. They need to have their own. They need supporting community-driven solutions, not just ticking a box by the international donor or funder, okay? Ensuring decisions are made closer to the affected population. The people themselves need to make the decisions, need to collaborate in the decision-making process, yeah? So why is all this very important? Why? Because only the local actors understand their context better. Who else is going to understand me except me? Who else is going to understand my culture except me, right? And local actors are the ones with community trust. Local actors are always, unfortunately, second class to international actors. But who are the ones that stay in the country when that international entity leaves? It's the local actor, yeah? And they are the ones that will continue and sustain their livelihoods. Sorry, everyone. So, the sad truth. It's hard to be positive all the time when you know the reality. But we have to make a difference regardless. So, with all of these commitments, with all of these treaties that are being signed around the world to support localization, to support local entities, to make sure that people are not forcibly displaced, unfortunately, the truth is that most humanitarian funding still goes through international intermediaries, which means that it is the UN, it is the international NGOs, it is international governments that receive the money first and give the rest to the people who need it the most. Local organizations are the ones who carry all risks. Strategic decisions, guess what? They're made in Geneva, they're made in the US, they're made in countries that are irrelevant to my home country, to your home country, to these people's home country. Yeah? The truth, unfortunately, is that we have localized implementation faster than we have actually localized power. Sorry, it's not moving. So again, I repeat, it's not about the funding. It's about the decision-making power, it's the leadership, it's the accountability, it's the knowledge ownership, it's representation. Localization is not simply transferring money, resources, it's transferring influence. With that being said, what then can be done here? So I'll give you an example about Syria again. So over time, Syrian NGOs have gone from being a simple service provider to a strategic humanitarian actor. So Syrian organizations have stood up to the United Nations, have stood up to the American government, have stood up to foreign governments, and have stood up to UNINGOs. And they have said, we need to be there in the decision-making process. We need to direct the future of our country. We need to direct what kind of technical assistance we require. We need to make those decisions. And only then, when they stood up as a community, as a whole, over 180 organizations came together and did that with the inclusion of several expats like myself working for them, with the inclusion of the diaspora in other countries, has the change been made. Local organizations are not simply capable of delivering aid. Local organizations know the needs, know the demands, know how to address the issues. They can shape their policies. They can create the sustainability and longevity and development of their own countries and of their people. I always say, here in Canada, when I'm in talks, I always say that, believe me, many people who are forcibly displaced to come to Canada, who are either refugees or who are forced to flee their countries, do not want to come to Canada, do not want to leave their homes, do not want to leave their food, do not want to leave their culture, do not want to leave their clothing, do not want to leave their traditions. They want to live in peace. They want to build their own lives in their home.